Come in, Ocean Sailor. Come in, Ocean Sailor.
So don't forget, viewers, please help us out by liking and subscribing. Thank you very much.
Welcome, everybody, to a new Ocean Sailor YouTube channel episode. It's me, Dick Beaumont.
And it's me, Dick Durham. And I've got a question from our Ocean Sailor comments page from Sailing Kudos, who's asked, can you please cover your international customs clearance experiences, Dick?
Oh,
That's a
blimey.
bit of a subject and a half, isn't it?
Uh, well, yeah, it is a big subject. It's a really big subject, and the thing is, it's extremely varied.
Right.
There aren't hard and fast rules, and the first thing that people have got to understand is, and I just want to say this right up front, you got to buy into the fact it is their country,
Right.
it is their regulations, it's their laws, and you are there at their behest as a guest or not.
Okay.
And if you think you've got any rights as you enter their country, you've already made the first mistake. You have got to understand it's their country, it's their rules, and if they want to invite you into their country, you're going to be in. And if they don't want to, equally, they're going to tell you to leave and go.
Okay.
And that happens.
Right.
Believe me, that happens. I've known people be very bombastic, be very demanding, and start throwing their weight around in customs offices. And I've seen people just shut down the whole customs office, and the customs officer who was actually dealing with this particular guy just shut his book and walked away. Didn't
Right.
say a word to him. And the guy's standing there saying, wait a minute, what's going on? Wait a minute, what's going on? And he just went off to another office and he just left him standing there. I stood there for about an hour, realised, and so did this guy, he's not coming back. And he walked off. I came back an hour later, walked in, and the customs officer started all over again. But guess what? I was smiling by then, and I was understanding that, these are his rules. So that's the very first thing to understand before you go.
Okay.
I think we could cut this, Sticky, into several different sections. And I think it would be good to really understand that it starts, the place it starts is when you have an intention to visit a particular given country. And you need to be into a protocol where you are understanding what they want. Again, it's back to what they want. You can clear into a country in some places simply by arriving. Call them up on the VHF radio and bam, and that's it. You're good enough.
You can
Some
go from
places,
there. Yeah.
yeah, some places even the marina will deal with it. Other places, it's going to be a very different story, and you need to give 7 days' notice in some countries and 1 day's notice prior to arrival, and then call them in VHF as soon as you're within VHF range, and that's how it's going to go on. So it's preparation to understanding what that country, that specific country, is going to need. And now, bearing in mind you're arriving, something that is not done as a method of rote, we can say, but it should be, is very first thing, take down the courtesy flag of the country you've just left, and put up the Q flag, the yellow duster.
Right.
That's the international sign that says you are arriving vessel and you're under quarantine until they give you free practique. So what you're looking to get is free practique to sail that country. So now you arrive, they tell you where to go. That can vary tremendously. As I've just said, some places that might just be the marina. But beware, because if you go to Singapore and you go to the marina will be in a hell of a lot of trouble and you'll be in even more. And I didn't know this, when I arrived, I got told, no, quick, go out to the quarantine area. And I had to sail off to another area and simply wait in that area, which was a couple of miles offshore. The wind got up, it was blowing, and the waves got up, and wasn't allowed to leave that designated area. And in their own time, the quarantine boat, the customs boat, I should say, will arrive. And what they actually did is put out a fishing net for me to drop all the ship's papers into.
Right.
So, and then they took those, still haven't said anything to me. I still don't know. You're trying to say, well, tell me what to do. No, they're not really interested. And they're going to do it in their own good time. And they're going to come back and they're going to then start processing you. So the first place to start, having looked into what that country is going to really want to know,
And that's a case of going to their embassy, Dick, is it? Or
no, it's on.
no?
You're going to find all this stuff online.
Okay.
Now you're going to find it all online. And so what you need to know is, okay, I'm going to arrive, and you're going to have to present your documents.
Okay.
Now, in the circumstances that I've just described, you can imagine that where they're putting a fishing net out for you to drop your passports and all your ship's papers in, right? You need a little bag to put it in. So you will need a nice little document wallet, something like that, and all the ship's papers will go in there. But don't, unless they demand it, don't present the originals. You'll have to present the originals of your passports, of course, but don't present the originals. Go make sure you've got 10 copies. I'm not saying they'll all need 10 copies, but a good thing for a skipper to do is have 10 copies of all the documents that you're likely to need. And it's going to vary a huge amount. So when you're talking about the documents that you're going to need, so before you arrive, most likely, if they are interested, and they're not always interested, if you have got to give notification, what they're going to want from you is a crew list. That's going to tell the nationality, the passport, the date of birth of your crew, your ship's registration papers, or copy of them, as I've already said, which is going to give them the details of your boat, your last port of call, and clearance out papers from that last port of call. And by the way, I have known many people think, yeah, that's not really very important, and they've cleared out, and they haven't got the clearance out papers, and they'll wind up in that country in a world of trouble, especially if that country happens to be Australia. So your last port of call, they will want to know if you've got arms on board, and this will need to go to them as an email with 7 days notice. They'll most certainly reply to you, and then sometimes they'll ask you to give them 1 day's notice of when that arrival is, because they know well enough you're telling them 7 days, but you're still sailing at that point. And you know, and I know, Dick, that you might think you're going to arrive on that day, but actually it could be 2 days before, 2 days afterwards. And otherwise, you may call them up on the VHF radio. So just go online. Good websites that will tell you this sort of information is Noon Site. There's websites and apps called Navili, and they'll provide you with some good information, and give them everything that they're asking for in clear and good copies, and then wait for the feedback to come back. So that's, before you arrive.
Just on those documents, Dick. I mean, I guess would you want the ship's insurance document as well?
Sorry, yes, you're quite right, Dick.
Yeah.
They may or may not ask for the ship's insurance documents
Right.
at that time.
Okay.
But when you arrive in the port, they will definitely want your insurance document.
Okay. And sometimes a bill of sale, maybe? I don't know. Is that is
No,
part of
no,
the
because you got your ship's registration
Okay,
papers,
fair
and I did mention. I think actually, let's have another crack at that. I think we're conflating two issues here. So, pre-arrival, you've determined whether you need to give notice, how much notice it's got to be. Sometimes, as I say, it's 7 days. Sometimes it's 7 days and 1 day before as well. Sometimes it's just by VHF radio arrival when you're in range. And sometimes they don't seem to care at all. The place to start will be knowing the port call channel, VHF
Yeah.
channel, often channel 12, and you'll be asking for the harbour master or the port control, and the port control will basically tell you, okay, you're clear to come in, or otherwise you're not. Then it all starts to kick off from that point. But before you arrive, the kind of things that you'll be asked for are your crew list. That will give the nationality, the passport, and the date of birth. Ship's registration paper, last port of call, whether there's any arms on board. They may or may not at this stage ask to see a copy of the insurance certificate. Normally, that'll come afterwards when you actually arrived. But one of the things that's key here is it's your responsibility to know if any of your crew need a visa uh, uh, approval and a visa stamp before you get there. Because
Right.
if not, there's two things that may happen. One of them did happen to me. If there is a visa requirement and you haven't applied for it, they won't give you free pratique and may not even allow you off the boat or even tell you to sail away until you have it. And then you've got to apply for it and go through all that rigmarole. But if a visa is actually rejected for one of your crew, as did happen to me when I arrived in Australia with a crew who was Indonesian, he was disembarked at the port, had to go to the airport, and I had to pay for his flight back home. And that's the end of the story.
Ah,
And just as you think, oh, well, no, that can't really work out. He's with us. And well, of course, he can have a seaman's book. That's a different story again. If he's a professional crew, he could have a seaman's book, which will allow him to come in on the vessel, but he'll be restricted for movements within a very small radius from the actual boat itself. That's perhaps that's getting into areas that most of us don't really need to worry about. But whether there's a visa requirement for all of those people arriving is very important to know.
now, Dick, when you're clearing into a country with all these documents, obviously it's customs you see, but there will be other authorities you need to see. Will the customs invariably explain to you which other offices you must go to
Yeah,
see?
well, you're quite right on the money there, Dick, because I give you the worst example. I arrived in the Andaman Islands. Fortunately, I was told when I left Phuket, where I was sailing out of, whatever you do, make sure you have an agent.
All
I
right.
did have an agent. Even with an agent, it still took me a day and a half
Good
to
grief.
clear customs. I had to provide 14 copies of every document.
God.
Andaman Islands are Indian territory, Indian national territory. And guess where the Indians learnt their bureaucracy from? Yeah, it
The
was us,
British.
Dick. It was the
Yeah.
British. So there's 14 sets of documents.
Yeah.
I was able to give that to the clearance agent, and off he went. And then he kind of kicked around for a little bit and waited. I thought, yeah, we'll see what I know. And then I remembered, oh, yeah. So I gave him 3 bottles of whiskey in brown bags, which he could then disperse amongst the various important offices that you need to go to help him and help me get cleared, yeah, as quickly as possible. And so, that's a whole different game, of course. When is that appropriate and when is it not? I don't know how you know the answer to that, but I think
No.
they'll tell you. You'll get
Yeah.
a clue. And so now you've got all of your documents, and let's say which documents are they that you need. So you need the crew list for sure. You need the ship's registration paper. You will probably want a builder's certificate. You may want a bill of sale. You want your insurance documents, and then from there, that will generally cover pretty well everything. What is worth noting is it depends on the country you arrive, the level of third party insurance that your vessel needs to carry.
All right.
And that's generally between about 2 and 5 million US or euros, not far off the same thing. And of course, when you're applying for your insurance for your vessel, a fairly innocuous question, oh, how much third party insurance do you want? And you think, oh, well, I'll tell them about 1 million or as low as possible because it'll be cheaper. And then they'll reject it. When you go into Greece, actually, there's an endorsement that has to be part of your insurance documents. Most yacht insurers will know about this, and there's other countries this applies to as well. But in Greece, you have to have that endorsement of the cover level, and it has to be written in Greek.
Oh, right.
And if you ain't got it, you ain't going in, mate.
All right.
You're just going to stay there. So yeah, that's the papers you need. You will also need the clearance out of the last port that you've been into, and of course, as I've already said, passports. Now, here's an important thing: the skipper, as soon as they take any crew on the boat, the skipper should hold all the crew's passports all the time that person is on the boat. And the reason for that is, God forbid, one crew decides you have a row, he arrives in port, he's got the hump, and he goes off the boat. You've got him on your crew list, right? His crew list is left wherever he was on your crew list. You now present him to the customs control, and he wants to see where this guy is, and the guy's not here anymore. He's definitely going to fine you considerable amount of money, including the cost of flying that guy home when they do find him. So, that's, and it's a big, big, big pain in the arse.
Yeah.
Because what's actually happening, that guy is become an illegal immigrant into that country.
Yeah.
So you hold them and you keep them all of the time the crew's there. And if a crew is leaving your boat, you have to go and you have to take him off your crew list. So you go to the customs, you present the crew list, the customs strikes him off the crew list. He now gets his passport back, but I'll tell you, he won't be able to come off that He won't be able to come off of that crew list unless he's got a means of going back to his home country. And so there's a cost. Unsuspecting sort of cruisers, we take on a couple of guys or girls as crew. There is quite a liability goes along with that.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. It is a good point.
What you will then get, assuming you've smiled a lot, you will then be given a transit log, often, not always. Sometimes you've just got free pratique. Sometimes you'll be given a transit log, and I'll come on to that in a second. I'll cover about the transit log and how much time you can spend in the country and all those kinds of things. But your next thing to consider is when you will arrive at customs to do your clearance in.
Right.
I'm strongly advising you arrive early morning, get there as close to 9 o'clock as you can, so that you have got the whole day to be able to present yourself to the customs office and to the various other offices are about. It's normal to have to go to 4 or 5 different offices, and those offices are the Port Authority, it's the Harbour Master. That's one and the same sometimes, but not always. You're going to have to go to customs and immigration. Sometimes they are different as well. Customs might be dealing with one issue of how much fuel, and they'll want to know how much fuel you've got on the boat, how much alcohol you've got on the boat. One thing to be wary of is they will also most certainly going to want to know if you've got any guns on the boat. And they're going to take your gun, probably they're going to take your gun and confiscate it, and they'll return it to the vessel whenever you depart. We've discussed this a little while ago about whether you have guns on board or you're not. But the point here is, if you're entering in one place, it's pretty damn unlikely that you're going to exit that country from the same port. So now
Yeah.
you've got to arrange for that to be transported to wherever you're going to pick it up next. If you have a cabinet on board, a specific arms cabinet on board, they may. I've never carried arms on board anyway, but they may put the gun or whatever it is into that cabinet and put a seal on it. And of course, that simply means you can't use it all the time that you're in that country. And if you do, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. So,
Right.
there you go. And don't even think about smuggling a gun in, because your vessel will be confiscated before you've even turned round.
That's
So,
kind of like a bonded store, is it? Almost a bit like
yeah,
booze sometimes.
it's a
Yeah.
bonded store.
Okay.
They're gonna in a lot of countries are going to want to know how much diesel you've got on board, how much water you've got on board. Uh, when you get to places like Australia, you can reckon that anything you have got on your boat, any foodstuffs I'm talking about that you've got on board, they are going to either confiscate and charge you for confiscating them, or you're going to, have to dispose of them. Generally, what people do is they dispose of all their foodstuffs way before they even arrive in Australia. Then when you get there, the big mistake that nearly everybody made, I made it too, is of course, while you're sailing, you've got refuse. And I store refuse in a black sack or several black sacks, depending on the journey, in the dinghy. And oh my God, if you've got any refuse on board, oh yeah, they're going to go bonkers. So I'm talking particularly about Australia. Common, I certainly had it several times I arrived, common for them to bring a sniffer dog on board and look for drugs. On the subject of drugs, we thinking in terms of narcotics generally, but actually, they may very well be very interested and want a full listing of all the medications you've got on board. And
All right.
so there's quite a lot of work to do. It depends.
So with the rubbish then, Dick, I mean, the fact that you've bagged it up, been responsible, you haven't tried to put it ashore anywhere, they still don't like it even being there. I mean, what are you supposed to chuck it
No, no,
overboard
no.
before you get there, or
Well, that's the implication you'd have, isn't it?
yeah,
That's the implication you'd have, and
they'll
they
charge you for
will.
disposing it, I suppose. You
They
bring in.
fined me
Oh wow,
heavily. I
wow,
can't quite remember, but I'll put a figure. I think they fined me something like 500 Oz dollars per sack.
wow.
Yeah, so it's about 250 quid,
Good
Dick, or
grief.
200,
Yeah,
300 euros or something like that. So it's significant,
right.
and of course, again, now we're talking about the actual point of arrival. So now you've arrived. Some places, the customs officers will come to you. You'll have a designated berth that you've got to go onto, or an anchorage, and you can't move from that. You certainly can't go ashore.
All right.
You stay on board. You're in quarantine until they've cleared you in. Other places, I just recently arrived in Malta. I didn't care. In fact, the Customs and Immigration office for yachts was closed over the weekend. And we arrived halfway through Sunday and thought, oh, well, first thing we've got to do before we go ashore. And the marina said, oh, no, don't worry about it. We'll take you there on Monday morning.
Oh, very civilized.
So, yeah, it is. Yeah, Malta's actually great. Just a little tip, maybe on the QT, I might tell you about Malta, is people are very worried, foreigners that are not European residents, about their amount of Schengen visa time. And if you're arriving into Malta as a foreigner, as a first port of call, they very kindly, if you might ask them, don't stamp your passport. Now that little trick, you might think, well, why have they not done that? They've built a massive industry about boats overwintering in Valletta. There's
Ah,
like 8 marinas, there's hundreds of boats. And as I say, that's great for the local economy. There's lots of people there. You can get the boat fixed up, and there's other people that will look after the boats. And yeah, it's really good. A similar situation, I just
so Dick,
might,
just
yeah,
just on
sorry.
that point, then, by not stamping your passport when you arrive in Valletta means that it's not got an expiry issue with regard to you're only allowed to be 3 months in the country and all this sort of stuff since
Yeah,
we've
well, you
left the
got
EU
most
in a
most
UK's case.
yeah, most Schengen visa is will allow you 90 days
Right. Okay.
in every 180.
Right.
Let's also, because it's worth the viewers knowing this, there's a big difference between the crew or guests, can be crew or guests, whichever you're going to call them, often doesn't make much difference, and the boat. The boat's okay. The boat can stay, it can go on the hard, it can stay there for generally a year, 18 months. In Turkey, it's 5 years, in other places, it's 2 years. And that boat is fine. Don't cross-cast the two and mix the two up. The regulations concerning the citizens, the people, the foreigners, and the boat are different.
Right.
Now, people will want to know about that because you arrive with a foreign vessel. It might be that the vessel is registered to wherever it's registered to. British Cayman Islands could be to Malta itself. It doesn't much help you if you're entering in Malta. There's certain regimes that are very friendly and helpful. Poland is one of them, and now you have got a certain amount. You arrive now in a country that's so it's a foreign vessel, and you're given a certain amount of time in that country. Normally, as I say, the rule of thumb is 12 months. After 12 months, you've got to clear out one day, clear in somewhere else. Obviously, it depends where that is. And, it could be half an ocean away, or if you're a bit clever, it could be somewhere there's a small island that's a different nationality. You clear in there, you sail all the way back again, you clear in for another 12 months. That's generally how it works.
Right.
And just in case anybody thinks you're doing anything wrong, that's how the whole world shipping works. Of course, foreign flag vessels are delivering cargo, are delivering passengers all the way around the world. And, it's not a big deal. It's a foreign flag vessel. It's given a certain amount of time to come, and then it goes off onto its next port. That's how commercial shipping works all around the world.
Right.
And it's the same. It's the same for yachts.
Okay.
So, okay, now you have been given your transit log. Let's say everything's gone hunky dory. The officers come and interview you at Australian Customs. You may gather from this, I haven't got a huge amount of time for the way they treat you. It's absolutely terrible. You feel like a criminal. And now, but you've now got your transit papers, and you've got a ship. It could be a ship's. It's called a log, a transit log, or something like that. And what they want you to do is record all the time you're in their territorial waters where your vessel is. You don't have to go every time you're going to go to an anchorage and find somebody. But what you would be best advised to do is periodically go to the port authority if you're handy there. Just go to the harbour master. Just give him your papers. Give him the transit log. He'll stamp them, so that when you come to exit the country, some weeks, months, days, years in some cases later, they can see where your vessel has been and that you have complied with their rules. I mentioned, I think, about the Andaman Islands and 14 copies of paperwork. Every single evening, I had to call in on a shortwave radio. I believe now they'll accept, communication by satellite communication, but a verbal communication, and you had to give your position, of where you was, and how long you're going to be there, and then following 24 hours, same thing again. Well, you got to understand that's a right pain in the backside. Of course, you can call them up and give them the position. You can't, and of course, half the time they don't answer. So.
No.
But just go back to the original mindset. You're in their country. So once you've understood we're in their country, they want to know where we are, especially in this world of illegal immigration, a huge amount going on, the customs officers, the coast guards will be all over you and can create some huge problems for you if you want to try and skim a little bit. So keep your documentation up to date. Keep the passports all the time. Don't give them back to the crew to go ashore. You know, you're running a big risk if you do that. And here's a few other kind of little tips and issues that you might want to know about. I talked about when you're going to arrive. If you can arrive Monday to Thursdays in a morning, that's your prime time. Depends on the country that you're going to arrive. And I'm going to say this in the nicest possible way, whether that is a third world country or it isn't. Because if it isn't, the rules and the regulations are roughly going to follow. If it is a third world country, be aware that you may well be asked to pay a certain amount of money. It's often not a big amount of money, but don't leave yourself open to arriving at 4:30 on a Friday and then saying, I want to clear in customs, because you'll suddenly get told, oh, yeah, this is customs overtime. And then you will get a very polite, we'll call it backsheesh is a nice word, an invitation to provide some backsheesh or some incentive for that customs officer to stay on overnight. Or stay on late, I should say. And that's how that part works. But they'll, if you can, and you might assume, as I've just told you, Malta, they weren't interested Saturday and Sunday. Other places, it's 24/7. And you'll expect to be able to go there and present yourself as soon as you're in. Some places, the customs officers are going to come to you and they're going to board your vessel and bring sniffer dogs, potentially. Other places, you're going to be able to just go off in the dinghy. One person goes, and the rest of the crew don't even show themselves. Back to Malta, similar situation. Just two of the crew went off, took the ship's papers, copies of, as I've just said, one of the 10 copies. Mostly, they're going to want about 4 or 5 copies of those documents. So take those with you. Don't take your originals and expect the customs officer will take his copies, because they won't. They'll just tell you to go away and come back when you've got copies. And then you'll go into tiny little shops and does the printer work. Oh, God, it can run you right into trouble.
Sure.
So other things to bear in mind, other than when you arrive, try and make it early in the morning, give yourself as much time, is try and, if you can, find out that the port you're going into, if it has any arriving or departing ferry services.
All right.
Why that is because if you're 501 in the queue of a ferry coming in, you can wind up being there for a long time. So 2-3 hours I've waited. I've understood that problem. So I just try and find out, are there any ferries coming in? Sometimes you can't really find that out till you get there, and you might pull in, you'll be alongside the dock, you might just sit on your boat and have a cup of coffee, have a beer while you wait, and then go. Most countries are not particularly concerned about clearing in right the very minute that you arrive. Most aren't. There is another couple of elements that I want to just explain to you how it needs to work and give you the benefit of what you need to do in these circumstances. In quite a lot of countries in the world, the clearance ports are, few and far between. And if you take the example of the Philippines, you clear out down in Subic or Manila, and you've got about 250 miles of island of Luzon before you going down the coast of it, before you head across to your next port of call, which in this particular case was Taiwan. You may well want to stop on the way. And of course, that's fine. If you stop and you drop anchor and you don't go ashore, you shouldn't get a problem. If circumstances are such that you might want to go ashore for whatever reason, and you've cleared out of that country, and by the way, generally you've got 24 hours to have cleared out of that country. If that does happen, a little twist, I'll probably get a lot of criticism for saying this, but take a part of your engine that looks like it's broken with you, an impeller, even a Jubilee clip, and have it in your pocket. If you get stopped, I did, that's why I'm mentioning it, in Luzon. I couldn't, but right in the top end, a place called the Batanes Islands. It's like it was as remote as you could possibly have. We decide we're going to go ashore and have a little bit of a foray, take a bit of a risk, you could say. And I go ashore, and sitting on the beach is a guy with a customs hat. He had shorts, no t-shirts, but a customs hat. I thought, oh my God. And I said to him, oh, I'm glad, thanks very much. Look, we've needed to come ashore. We need to get one of these Jubilee clips. He took me on a 3 or 4 hour tour of the entire island to try and find a replacement Jubilee clip I didn't really need. I got myself in more of a pickle, I suppose, and was it worth going ashore? But just take something with you that can demonstrate a reason for going ashore. That's just a little twist.
Good bit of practical advice. Yeah.
I would tell you.
Can you presumably, Dick, when you getting back to your point about, remember, it is their country, it's your keel, but it's on their water, in their territorial water. Presumably, even under stress of weather, countries, I mean, do they do this, or can they? They can do it, I suppose. Can they deny you entry completely? Can they just say go?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I tell you, that whole thing was particularly exacerbated during COVID.
Oh, right. Yeah, cool.
Because they did.
Yeah.
I know of one sailor who sailed from Panama, or from exit of the Panama Canal, 5,000 miles to the Marquesas. When he arrived, during that time he'd been away, the whole COVID thing had started. He arrived and they refused him entry, and he had to sail to Hawaii.
Good God.
Another 3,000 miles without going ashore and without provision. It's their country. They can do what they want. I know of another guy that arrived in the Philippines, and he was the owner of a Kraken yacht, and he was quite a difficult cove, actually. His wife was very nice, but he was quite a difficult cove. And I knew where he was going. It was not, everywhere was recovering from COVID at the time, and places were opening up again. So I knew a particular guy in this particular place that he was going in the Philippines, and he rode over to meet him, and the guy said, well, what do you want? In a very nice way, not. And he said, well, no, no, Dick Beaumont, and he's told me you're sailing this way, and if you need any help. He said, do I look like I need any help?
Oh, charming.
He said, well, yeah, okay. He said, well, just to warn you, for goodness sake, call up the port authority, the port captain, on the VHF before you actually go ashore. He ignored that, went ashore. They arrested him, took him back on his boat, and confined him to his boat without allowance to go ashore or leave the port for a month.
Good grief.
For a month. So, it's their rule book. This is the big message I'm trying to get out to everybody. On the other hand of it, go there with the right attitude and understand all these things and ask for their help, and you are highly likely to get it. I sailed from New Zealand, from South Island, New Zealand, and you would normally need to clear out at Dunedin. Actually, you did need to clear out at Dunedin, and you'd normally get, as I've said, 24 hours. And so, okay, great, I'm going to sail out of there. Oh, hang on a minute. Milford Sound. Ah, it's this fantastic place that you would want to. It's like a series of fjords. Anybody
Right.
that's been to New Zealand, that's been to Milford Sound, will know it's just astonishing. It's like, Lord of the Rings, it's The Hobbit, it's all of that, and it's the Norwegian fjords, and it's an amazing place. I thought, geez, well, what do I do? Do I take a chance and just don't clear out or whatever? And I thought, no, come on, let's do the right thing. So I called New Zealand Immigration and Customs Clearance and I said, look, I want to spend a week in Milford Sound before I go. Will you let me do that? And they did. They
Oh,
gave me
nice. Yeah.
clearance. They gave me delayed clearance. So
Yeah.
everything was hunky dory. So talk to these people. Don't try and do it at 4:30 on a Friday.
No.
Don't do it at the end of the day. Go and talk to them, listen to what they've got to say, and then stick to their rules.
Uh,
Because yeah, that's going to make life an awful lot easier.
what about Dick?
Yeah,
That was a good experience, but I guess there have been places in the world where you've had experiences not so good. Might be chastening for our viewers, but can you reel off a
yeah,
couple of those?
yeah. Australia and Australia. Oh yeah, then there's Australia. I mean,
Okay.
they are very, very arrogant.
Hmm.
They are very, very controlling in what they're asking you to do.
No,
Yes, I
smiling,
know.
you can't smile at them. That won't work.
Oh,
Can't
it
be
doesn't
nice.
work. It
No.
doesn't work at all. I
Okay.
mean, I won't go through the whole story, but they were very, very difficult
All right.
from the offset. From the offset, I had given them notice. They claimed they hadn't got it. I was able to prove it, and they then said, "We'll prove we received it."
Oh my
Huh?
God.
How'd you go on with that? And
Which
they
port
can.
was this, Dick? Just out of
This is
interest.
this is in Cairns.
Okay.
After I'd sailed out of Papua New Guinea,
Right.
I'd done everything right, but they claimed they hadn't got my emails telling them all the details, and I had quite a hard crossing. I'd
Right.
gone 24 hours without sleep, and so they're firing. They turned up with sniffer dogs and Christ knows
Oh
what.
my God.
And yeah, it was the third degree, I'll tell you. And then they fired all this, and they said, "Well, Captain, you and your crew are confined to the vessel. I'm going to come down tomorrow. I want you to think about, various situations, and I'm warning you, you may well be under arrest.
Wow.
Blimey, this is, welcome to.
Any hint, Dick, at all as to why they were like that? Was it were they
Well, they
jealous of
claimed
the
they
boat
had
or?
no, no, no. Oh, gosh,
Hmm.
no.
Hmm.
They you know, big hat syndrome, a lot of
Right.
it, I
Okay.
think. Officialdom, I'm in charge, king of the roost. And they claimed I hadn't
Oh,
sent
right.
the
Okay.
papers, even when, as I say, I downloaded the email that I sent them. They then
Right.
said, well, you can't prove it. They
Right.
then came to me and said, okay, well, we've put your information up to the senior officers, and we're going to give you a caution under arrest. We're going to give you a caution and allow you to carry on. I said, hey, oh, hang on a minute, a caution? That means I'm admitting guilt, right? They said, yeah, well, yeah, of course, we didn't get. I said, no, I'm not doing that.
Hmm.
They said, well, what do you mean you're doing it? I said, no, I'm not admitting guilt for something I know I haven't done. They then confined me to the boat for another 24 hours and considered. And I said, I'll go to court because obviously then you've got a record
Yeah. Of
already in
course. Yeah.
Australia. You ain't
Yeah.
been there 5 minutes.
No.
And then we had all kinds of they are very, very clipboard orientated.
Right.
They got rules for rules for rules, I tell you.
That's
And so
unusual for the Aussie sort of character
well,
normally.
I don't think it is.
Okay.
I think they are quite. They've got quite a lot of documentation about everything you should do in life,
Right.
including how much suntan lotion you got to put on and all this. Anyway, we won't get into too much of that. So that was a big problem for me.
Right.
Um, I sailed into Madagascar in a place called Ile Sainte Marie, and that was a very different problem. I called them and called them and called them on every channel you can imagine. Couldn't get any answer, couldn't get any response whatsoever. Admittedly, there weren't very many boats ever arriving there, I'm sure. And eventually I thought, well, I'll have to go ashore. So I went ashore. I went to what I thought was a government office. Yeah, they said, "Oh no, you need to go here." They sent me about 5 miles, which of course I'm walking in one direction. I got there, that was closed. And then I asked around, they said, "Oh no, you need to go to here," and
Yeah.
then that second place was closed. And by the time I walked around this little, it's quite a small town, for about 4 or 5 hours, this very kind young lady stopped I'll never forget it, on a pink Lambretta, and said, "I've seen you walking around." She spoke great English. "I've seen you walking around. Can I help?" And I said, "Look, I'm trying to clear in my boat." So she said, "Oh, okay, jump on the back of my little," and we went to two other places that were also closed, and we had to come back. And she picked me up in the morning,
Oh,
took me to,
brilliant.
yeah, and I eventually cleared in. They
Mm.
didn't give a damn, by the way.
Oh,
Interestingly, just a little side note, perhaps that's because of some of their history. Ile Saint Marie is the place where it was very famous for pirates as an enclave for pirates, including Blackbeard, and
all
he
right.
based his operations there. So perhaps they were used to pirates like me. I don't know.
Oh, I don't
But
know.
so
Yeah.
so that was Mauritius was a different story, and a difficult one, a big problem for me. And that was, we cleared in. They were as helpful as anything. And 2 days later, we were diving. We were anchoring in a bay. I can only think it was something to do with our diving activity. And I was just about on the third day. I was just about to roll into the water off the boat, and one of my mates on the boat said, "Oh, Dick, you better hang on. It looks like there's a custom boat heading towards us." And he came round the headland, headed straight towards us. There was two or three other small boats in the anchorage. Bang! He was coming on a beeline to me. Pulled up alongside, told everybody to freeze. I'd got out of the water by now. Told everybody to freeze. They then put 12 officers on board the boat,
Good grief.
customs, yeah, and searched every element of the boat. They took the headlinings down. They opened the bottles and they smelt the bottles to
Yeah.
see what was in the bottles. Was it the real stuff? And blah, 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 blah. Of course, they didn't find anything, not silly enough to do that. They
Oh,
didn't find anything at all. And after 2 or 3 hours, I then said to, they were, of course, it often happens, good cop, bad cop. One of them was seen to be good cop. And I said, "Okay, well, it's finished. You didn't find anything. What's the crack?" And he said, "No, no." He said, "It's just a routine visit." I said, "Nah, nah, get out of it. It's not a routine visit. There's 12 of you. You came round that headland. You were coming the boat was called Moon Shadow. You were coming directly to my boat, Moon Shadow." And he said, "Well, where did you come from?" So I said, "Well, I sailed into Mauritius from Cocos Keeling Islands in Australia." And he said, "And did you go anywhere on the way?" I said, "Well, yeah, but I went to Rodriguez." He said, "Well, there's not many boats go there. So we're wondering the purpose."
no,
Oh, what are you supposed to do? What's the answer to that?
I don't know. No.
So, as I say, there's lots of very, and bear this in mind, and come back to the theme. Don't be in a hurry, guys and girls. Just take your time, enjoy it as part of the perils or the benefits or the interests of cruising, because the more you get wound up, the longer it's going to take you. And yeah, go there well prepared, smile on your face, relaxed, and understand that you're at their
Fair,
behest.
fair enough. One of the stories that used to crop up quite a lot when I was on the staff of Yachting Monthly was the Greek islands. And I don't know if it's still the case, Dick. I know you know them well, but it was we were dealing quite often with harbour authorities kind of more or less bribing yachts to pay up in various islands, and you had to. And it was different with every
Well,
island. I don't know if
that
that's
yeah,
the
yeah,
case,
they
but
formalised that now. There is a cruising permit
right,
that costs you a nice few quid. I
okay,
can't remember, but I'm going to tell you that runs into the several hundreds.
does it?
It does.
Wow.
And yeah, that's just a contribution to the Greek economy pretty well
Yeah,
for
right.
cruising. Well, fair enough. It's their
Yeah.
islands. They're beautiful. I want to cruise them. So there's a
Yeah.
cost to doing that. I
But
should
that now
also,
that's taken care of that issue, is it? That document.
yeah, there's a very big that's a good point you've raised there, Dick, because I'll tell you what you should do. Make sure when you're clearing into an archipelago like that, you're clearing into a place where they regularly receive yacht clearances in and out.
Right.
You can say, for example, you're coming from Turkey, you go to Kos, or any of the nearby islands, then they're going to be very used to that operation.
Right.
I made the mistake of trying to sail through most of the islands and trying to clear into an island that's pretty well bang slap in the middle of the Aegean, which is Santorini, and they had no clue how to deal with me, and
Right.
no clue, didn't know what they were supposed to do. Looking at my papers sort of upside down, and I wound up taking a day to clear in. Quite a frustrating day to clear in Santorini. Of course, there's lots of passenger liners going in there, but
Yeah.
they get like 200 passports in a package, and the guy sits there and bang, 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 bang. But now they've got to confront, what's this all about? Where's he come from? Where's he going? What's a transit log? And how do we issue that? And so you're very best advised to clear in and out of places at, you could say, pretty well the first landfall you come to in that country, if you can.
Because that's going to be the tried and tested route, pretty much.
Yeah. And here's another big thing about Europe. Don't go thinking, as many people would, well, I've cleared into Europe, so that's it. Oh, no. You're going to need to clear into Greece. You're going to need to clear into Croatia. You're going to need to clear into Italy. You've still got to go through all of those various regimes. So, yeah.
So what, even the Schengen countries?
Yeah, particularly the Schengen countries.
So it doesn't apply then. Schengen doesn't apply to the sea.
It applies to you, to the individual.
I see. Ah, right. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes, that's one thing.
Right.
But it doesn't apply to your ship clearing into in and out of that particular country.
Right.
I'm sure there's lots of other questions that people might like to ask about clearing in and clearing out. If there are, just drop us a line as a comment on any of the YouTube videos we put out, and we'll endeavour to answer them all.
Yeah, of course. And also any viewer that has his own or her own experience, which can add to this body of work.
Yeah,
it'd be useful, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's very useful. I mean, if we could build up there's some really good, websites out there that you can get some good information about where and how. And I should also tell you, one of the things you need to do when you're going to arrive in the country, look up where are the clearance ports of that country.
Right.
Because it's not everywhere. You can't rock up somewhere and go, I'd like to clear in. It's their rules, don't forget. Back to that one again. So you need to find out where's the right place to clear in.
Okay.
So I hope it's given our viewers a bit of a heads up on this. You've got to treat it as a fun experience.
So it's clear in, clear out, or clear off.
It is, yeah. I will tell you something. Just in case everyone is not so totally clear about whether or not you've got rights. I sailed in my very early sailing times. I sailed the Caribbean, and at that time, South Africa was still under apartheid regime, and they refused to clear them in.
Oh wow!
South African boats turned up, and they just refused to clear them in. I said, no, we don't want you. Off.
So that's very interesting, isn't it? Because that's, I mean, kind of a political statement. It's got nothing to do really whatsoever with one would assume the harbour authority. They've just decided we don't like it. We don't agree with your national policy.
That's it. And
so it shows you it shows the authority these people have.
They've got tremendous authority, Dick.
yeah.
And you also got to remember, especially when you're talking about third world countries, the guy with a badge and a suit, and he works in a senior position for the government, his authority goes.
All right.
Don't think you're going to put an appeal into someone and go to his senior officer and say, "Oh, look, he talked to me a bit funny." Don't think any of that. What you're going to get is what we call in the UK. You're going to get the bum's rush. You're
Yeah.
going to get clear off, pal. Thank you very much, but no, thank you. That's
No,
what's
fair
going to
enough.
happen.
Okay. No.
I mean, it doesn't happen very often. Very, very rarely. And it is all about the attitude. Of course, of course, you could say there's also the other thing. If you have upset the guys, you're inviting them to trawl through your paperwork,
Yeah,
and there's
sure.
plenty of it,
Yeah.
and try and find out what's wrong.
Yeah.
And when they do that, that's the excuse.
And it
Bang,
takes
away you go.
time. Yeah. Even if
It
there's nothing
takes
wrong.
tremendous time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's always an anomaly in paperwork somewhere.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay. All right.
So, yeah, as I say, I hope that's giving everybody a nice heads up, and that's
Good.
that's good afternoon from me.
And good afternoon from me.
Okay,
All
bye
right.
everybody. I wish you fair winds and easy seas.